Hope you guys enjoy that introduction and the whole beat that I'm playing. If you guys do enjoy it and want to hear a full version, make sure you guys go down in the description of this video. I will leave a link to the full beat that I have uploaded on my Bandcamp. One of my goals from now on is to upload these beats that I'm working on, the full version, on my Bandcamp. Therefore, you guys can actually support the channel. And not only that, but actually listen to the beats that I'm putting together. So if you guys want to support the channel, feel free to go down to the description and donate whatever you guys want to this beat and enjoy the music that we're creating. Now, these 5 features that I'm going to go over in the MPC workflow is honestly the 5 tools that I use the most when I'm sampling music and I'm creating my beats. Honestly, if you are just getting started with sample-based music, or you just picked up an MPC, or even considering and picking up an MPC, I highly recommend you guys start learning these 5 features, because this is what makes my sample-based workflow so much easier when I'm creating music. Now, there's 2 things that I want to mention. There's the creative side, and then there's a technical side. The creative side is when we listen to something, we have an idea, and I'm sure most of your ideas are amazing. But what stops us from executing these awesome ideas that we have is going to be the technicality. Now, with the MPC, these 5 features make my workflow so much easier when I'm creating music and I'm actually in my creative zone. So before we go any further, I would like to know from some of you guys that have been sampling music for a very long time, what are some of your favorite features from the MPC workflow? What are some of the features that you really enjoy using that make your life easier when you're producing music? Let us know down in the comments. I actually would like to know, and I'm sure some of the other viewers would benefit from some of your comments. So let's jump right into it. Now, one of my favorite features when it comes down to sampling music is being able to monitor what I'm going to sample while I push play on my sequencer. So if I actually go into my sampler, I'm able to hit this in button, and when you engage that in button, you will be able to monitor whatever it is that you're about to sample when you hit play on your sequencer. Now, the reason why this is so powerful is because coming from the 2000 XL, you're not able to do this. Some samplers will not allow you to monitor what you're about to sample while you play back your sequence. The reason why this is so important is because if you start with a drum groove, or if you have a drum break playing on your sequencer, I do actually right here, I'll go ahead and hit play on these drums. I got this drum playing back right here, and as I'm listening to this drum groove, I don't know what I'm gonna sample yet. And since I don't know what I'm gonna sample yet, what I like to do is, if I'm sampling from my vinyl record or from YouTube, I like to listen to the record that I'm about to sample while I hit play on the drums. Now, they're not gonna be in sync. They're gonna be out of sync, but I like to just kind of get a feel for both of these elements and how they're gonna come together. So if the drums are playing and the way they sound, the way I put them together matched up with the sample that I'm gonna hear, there's so many times where I'm just like, you know what, this sample's not gonna work. I'm gonna move on to the next sample. And that helps me match a connection with the sample and the drums that I'm gonna be working with. So for an example, I don't know how this is gonna sound, but I'm gonna hit play and listen to the drum break that I have playing on the sequencer. And I'm gonna listen to some of these samples that I'm considering sampling and see if this is gonna work together. So that's my sequencer. And right here, I have a couple samples. Let me see how this is gonna sound. Now, it's not gonna be in tempo, but let's just kind of get a feel for it. Now, this is a perfect example. This is not gonna work. This is something that I would skip because these drums are playing a whole different groove versus the sample. This sample's got some strings. It's a very mellow sample. The drums, they got a lot going on. So I would skip on this. Either I would switch up my drums or I would just switch the sample that I'm going to sample. I would skip on it. Now, this is very powerful because like I mentioned, on the 2000 XL, I would not be able to get an idea of how my sample and my drums were going to match. So just having these extra tools really make my workflow a lot easier. Now, moving over to my second key feature would be the slice mode when I'm sampling into the MPC. So if we actually go into our sampler, we have this function right here where it just says sample, and we can sample into the MPC like any other traditional sampler, and then after we can start chopping up our samples. Well, with these new MPCs, we actually have this slice mode. If we jump over to slice mode, we're able to hit play on our record that we're going to sample, whether it's vinyl or is on YouTube. And while we hit play, we're able to start clicking the pad and it will automatically start slicing those chops for you and create a program right on the fly, which saves so much time and is just so convenient. Again, these features that I'm going over match up with your creativity. Why do I mention creativity is because there's so many times when I listen to a record and right when I listen to it, something just gets triggered in my brain that I'm like, okay, I already have that idea. And being able to execute your idea on the fly, just straight out making your chops while you're sampling, just puts everything together faster, which allow you to focus on your creative side versus the technical side. So here's an example. I'll say I'm gonna go ahead and sample this record. And while I'm sampling it, I'm gonna be on slice mode and I'm gonna go ahead and start slicing and chopping up my record while I'm sampling, which is pretty cool. So as I'm hitting these pads, it's already slicing up for me. It keeps going to bank B, but you guys get the idea. Now, once I'm done right here, it tells me I can go ahead and create this into a program already, which I'm gonna go ahead and do. I'll go to main and let's go to an empty track. Or if I go to my drum programs, I'll bank through and right here is my new program that I just sampled. Now, these things are very powerful for me that I'm coming from an older MPC. Now, if you're just getting started with making beats and sampling and you just picked up one of the newer MPCs, you probably won't really realize how powerful these features are. You already have them as you're learning how to make beats. But for somebody that has come from an older MPC that didn't have these features, I really appreciate some of these updates that we have on an MPC that really make my life so much easier and save me so much more time on chopping up samples. Now, as you guys can see, I had a sample, I sampled it into the MPC, and at the same time I'm sampling, I'm creating my chop. So I'm doing two things at the same time, which honestly gets me faster to my creative side versus the technical side. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, moving over to the third key feature, which we're talking about chopping up samples and creating programs, is going to be that you are working in a non-destructive workflow, which again is very powerful, because let's say I'm sampling and I'm creating these slices and I'm hitting these pads. Let's just say I did not hit these pads exactly where I want to hit them. I can always go back into my sample editor and adjust the start and end point of each individual slice, which I really enjoy that workflow, because not other samplers will let you do this task. I've worked with other samplers that once you create your chops, you have to commit to those chops and there's no going back. So if you notice that you did a slice and it was way off timing, you cannot go back. In this case, we can always go back and adjust the start and end point. Let's just say right here, if I go from trim to chop, I could, like, I did not get that right on the snare hit, so I can actually adjust this. So as you guys can see, I'm adjusting the start and end point of each slice after I've created my program. Again, it's a very powerful feature that we have on these newer MPCs. Now let's move over to the fourth key feature, which will be our program editor, which this is really powerful. If we move over to the program editor, this is after we've created our program. So once we have our chops, everything is done, we're ready to move over to the SAMP or the program editor. There's some really powerful tools here that I want to go over. This program editor is really powerful because you can actually pitch up or down the entire program as you like. And it's very easy. You just go to your semitones and you could pitch down the whole entire program, really easy. I've worked with other samplers that allow you to do this function, but it's just not as smooth as within the MPC workflow. This is really easy to adjust and readjust as you want with a click of a button. Now, being in this page, you also have the flexibility to assign LFOs and the attack and release of a certain sample, or you can click this little drop tablet right here, and you can go from current pad and affect just the pad that you have selected versus multiple pads. So let's just say you want to select just this middle row right here and affect that and put a certain LFO on these 4 pads. You can just select those 4 pads, or if you want to go ahead and select all of your program, you can go ahead and affect the entire program. So having these functions and these options right at your fingertips, trust me, it makes sampling so much easier as you're thinking about ideas. And now moving to my fifth feature that I enjoy within the MPC is gonna be if we go into our sample editor. Being right here in the sample editor, I'm gonna go over how these pads work. I'm not gonna go over each and every function because honestly, I don't know what they all do. I just know what the functions that I want to work with do. So let's say you have a sample right here, and this pad 1, if you click it, it's going to play the entire sample with just one click. As you guys can see, it's playing the whole entire sample. That's cool if you want to listen to your sample. But then you have your pad 3, which will play a few seconds before your endpoint. So say you just want to select a loop and you want to tighten up this loop. You don't want to listen to the whole entire sample because it might take up some time. So if you hit pad 3, it's not going to start from the beginning. It's only going to start a few seconds before the endpoint, just so you can see where exactly you're going to end that endpoint. So if I want to select the perfect loop, 1-bar loop, I'll hit the start. 1, 2. Let's actually get a 1-bar loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom. So if I want to adjust and just get a 1-bar loop, I can use some of these pads. Now I'm only going to hear a few seconds before the endpoint. Boom, right there. So I will switch over. Awesome. And now pad 4 will let you listen to anything after that endpoint that you're going to truncate, to make sure you have selected what you need to select. And now pad 5 will do the same thing, but pad 5 will only play as long as you're holding it. And you let go and it stops playing. And now pad 16 is very powerful because pad 16 will actually loop whatever you have from your start and end point. 2, 3, 4. And it just loops, which is really powerful as you're selecting a loop that helps you perfect the loop that you're going to select. And if you need to make any adjustments, you can make those adjustments and this will adjust on the fly. You see? And you guys can go ahead and perfect that 1-bar loop. There you go. So those are the pad functions that I use the most when I'm chopping up samples and try to really get a perfect loop. If you guys want to go ahead and select a perfect loop, these tools are very powerful. All right, so those are the 5 main key features that I wanted to point out, but I am going to add 2 quick bonus features into the list. And this one is going to be color coding your pads. This is very powerful. I don't use this all the time, but I mainly will use this function when I'm banking through and I actually have all my banks filled up. This helps me get more organized. This beat that you guys heard in the introduction, I'll actually play it real quick. You know, whatever, you know, I'm kind of going over bank B. You guys get the idea. You know, I have this whole entire banks filled up. I talked about this in the previous video. Make sure you guys check it out. I'll leave a link somewhere up here. But I talk about sampling and how I like to fill up these banks. You know, I don't just hear 2 or 3 seconds of a sample and commit to that. I will sample more than just the part that got me interested on that sample. I will fill up these banks. Even though I'm not going to use some of these, I'm okay with that. But I would like to have that on the workflow as I'm playing back these drums. I might bank over and use some of these other pads that I thought that I was not going to use. So in this sample, I heard this record and I fell in love with this sequence right here. I could have just looped that, which sounds pretty cool. But I sampled more than just that loop and I filled up all these banks. And when I filled up all these banks, I realized that I actually wanted to grab the first 2 beats of this section. When you find the girl you love. When you find the girl you love. And I wanted to bank back to get this section. And then I wanted to bank back. So if this makes sense, like I'm kind of going back and forth from different sections and piecing different sections as a puzzle. So in order for me to stay organized, I like to color code my pads on these newer MPCs to keep me organized with my workflow and my chops and my slices. Once I get triggered on like, all right, I'm gonna use all these purple pads and these white pads, I'm going to bypass these white pads, so I'll color them white, and I'll use these green pads, which I selected green, and I would just kind of like bank through. I'll go back and forth. I'm jumping back and forth, bank A and bank B. In order to color code your pads, you will actually go to menu, pad 6 or pad 4, which is pad colors, and right here you'll go to single pad and fixed. And whatever pad you select, if it's on purple, it was gonna color it purple. Now, I don't always use this workflow. I don't always color my pads, but I will do this when I am filling up all these banks and I'm going through and I'm selecting some of these. And when I hit play, I wanna bank through. I will color code my pads. That's actually the last bonus point that I wanted to add, but I really want to let you guys know, if you are just getting started with beat production and sampling and you picked up one of these newer MPCs, you're very spoiled, because being on an older machine, yes, they're cool, they sound awesome, and the sampling of how these machines sound, it does sound great, but is not all that. Trust me. Like, my 2000 XL is collecting dust. I'm not using it. Yes, it does have a characteristic to that sound, but being honest with you guys, I don't use that MPC. I just have it because I have an emotional attachment to it. This is where I'm at 99% of the time, because of these features that are given to us within these updates. And if you guys are from an older MPC and you guys are trying to get back into the beat making world and sampling, do not feel afraid of jumping on to these newer MPCs, because they really do make the workflow a lot easier, and they save you so much time. Like, it's crazy. Now, I apologize if this video went over a little too long, but I hope you guys enjoyed some of these key features. If you guys have some other key features that I did not mention, please let us know down in the comments so we can also learn from you guys. And again, if you guys made it to the end of this video, I highly appreciate you taking your time to watch some of these videos. Do not forget to give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And also, I'll catch you guys on our next video. Peace.